Welcome back, all you wily wall crawlers, to the Mediocre Spider-Man, my semi-monthly crime-fighting crusade where I web-swing my way through arachnid-based video games. But, please stop asking me for Spider on the PS1, it's just a figure of speech, so stop bullying me! Anyway, I thought it might be a nice change of pace to do something a bit different this time around. A showdown, a throwdown, hell no, I can't slow down, we're gonna go now with a head-on-head comparison between two classic 16-bit titles that, in the greater Spidey video game verse, are not as well remembered as others, but still had a profound impact on the webhead's career in interactive mediums. SpiderMan vs. the Kingpin on both the Genesis and Sega CD are a very interesting pair, with the latter being not just a simple port with cheesy CD music and weird animated cutscenes, but a full-on remake with various changes and improvements, but also with the cheesy CD music and weird animated cutscenes. It's actually staggering the amount of stuff they changed for this version, as I always assumed it would do what most Sega CD games did, which was to add some type of FMV, reduce the amount of colors, and call it a day. So that's what we're gonna do. Dive into both versions, check out all the changes, the added villains, levels, and features, and see which one comes out on top and manages to save Mary Jane from a messy, goopy fate. So, with the clock ticking, quickly to the Spider-Man-mobile! Aww. Spider-Man was released on Sega's flagship 16-bit console in 1991, a character which Sega licensed directly from Marvel, but it was a motley crew who went under the name of Technopop who developed it, with many eventually finding places within Sega of America themselves. Because when you get to the title screen, it reveals its full moniker, which is in fact Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin, as I guess they couldn't fit it all on the box? Well, whatever the case, it delivers what it promises on the tin. Wilson Fisk, tired of Spider-Man's jabs at his husky frame, just beams himself into all TV and radio channels and says, "Spider-Man is an evil criminal," and starts cutting a promo, saying,
"Spider-Man is an evil criminal, believe me. He's also planted a giant mega bomb in the city, and I know this because, trust me. Anyway, I, the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, am putting out a cash reward, so please kill Spider-Man. I'll give you some money, trust me, I totally will. I'm not the Kingpin."
This is WrestleMania, baby!
What the hell was that?
This rock-solid accusation by the Kingpin then incentivizes the entire city to go out and murderize our webbed wonder. Random criminals, cops, that's not a surprise, passers-by, animals, everyone wants a piece of Spidey's stupid sexy ass. To get to the bottom of this, our hero needs to punch and swing his way through 7 levels of straightforward, no-nonsense side-scrolling, so it's about what you'd expect, aside from the few things you totally don't. What Spidey on the Genesis does, that many other games didn't attempt at that time, is to really give the wall crawler a voice through some fairly amusing text dialogue that caps off every major boss fight, as well as a few little interludes where he monologues to himself, planning his next move. In addition to that, Technopop saw fit to be the first ones to incorporate Peter's photography side hustle into the gameplay. So if you pause the action and select the camera, you'll snap a pic of whatever enemy is on screen, usually a boss, which nets you extra money at the end of the stage, which then refills Spidey's web fluid meter. This does slow down the gameplay a bit, but it's still cool that they added such a feature. Not only that, to contend with the game's admittedly tough challenges, the developers allow you to visit Peter's apartment where he just chills in this one big empty room with no furniture. I guess to get away from all the stresses of his life. Yeah, I'm coming.
Give me rent.
In actuality, doing this replenishes your health meter for free, although it takes longer than it should. Speaking of health and difficulty, the live system of Spider-Man is quite unique. That bit where Kingpin said there was a bomb set to explode was about the only true thing that came out of his mouth, as when you start the game, a timer begins counting down, and every death or farting around in Peter's apartment getting healed takes time away from the counter much faster, and when it reaches 0, the old Parker luck takes hold with a bad and explosive end. Beating bosses rewards you with keys, which you will then eventually use to disarm the bomb. But during regular gameplay, that timer does tick down, but pretty slowly, so there's not a ton of pressure, but I'd say about 9 deaths or so will earn you a game over. And there's no type of password system either, so you need to beat the game all in one go without screwing up too much. So yeah, it's a rather hefty challenge for our old web spinner. The actual gameplay, thankfully, isn't too frustrating, and honestly was the best representation of Spider-Man seen on consoles up to that point, as the web swinging feels good, the levels aren't too hard to navigate, there's no weird obtuse puzzles, and it features a raft full of Spidey's rogues gallery. Doc Ock, Electro, Lizard, Sandman, Hobgoblin, Venom, Forklift Guy, Gorilla, and of course, Baby Huey. Out of all of them though, Venom is perhaps the most curious. He appears sorta randomly on 2 different levels, he just kinda swings in, takes a few pot shots, and leaves, before you then take him down in a penultimate battle towards the end of the game. Why this is weird is that the story doesn't acknowledge him at all, as there's no cutscenes or dialogue between the two, unlike every other villain, which just feels kind of unfinished. Venom was the villain of the comics in the early 90s, so the fact that he has no story urgency here is kinda curious. The only other nits I can pick with this version is that some hitboxes for various enemies and bosses seem pretty inconsistent, which can get on the nerves from time to time. Finally, adhering to walls is also a bit awkward, as you sorta need to double tap the jump button to make it work, and it takes a lot of getting used to, and even when you do, it still doesn't seem to happen 100% of the time. Anyway, in summation, Oh, wait, did I say that's the last nitpick? Hell no, it's not. And probably the most baffling decision, despite the game putting a heavy emphasis on story, Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin doesn't really have an ending, or at least one that's in line with what you've already seen during the course of the game. You knock Fisky against the wall, console Mary Jane, cops walk into the scene, thanks for not believing me earlier, shitheads, who then haul the big guy off. Congratulations, and that's it. Like, could we have not gotten one dialogue scene with MJ? Could she not have called me Tiger? I need that moral support. Like, it doesn't even matter if you beat the game on the hardest difficulty, as it's always the same ending. So yeah, it's definitely a bit weird and rough around the edges and feels a little bit undercooked, but the graphics aren't bad, the control and web swinging are solid, there's lots of villains and some amusing dialogue, and a few novel features that you really didn't see in licensed games at the time. If there was a web spinner pointed at my head and if I was to slap a score on it right now, I'd say 3 escaped gorillas out of 5. But the question is, amongst all the wild changes the Sega CD version implemented, do any of them make for a better overall game? Well, let's find out. Coming out in 1993, when the Sega CD was already getting a bit old in the tooth, Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin, despite this custom new snazzy box art, was not nearly the commercial success that its predecessor was, which, if I didn't mention earlier, was a multi-million copy seller. The changes made are apparent as soon as you start the game, as you're greeted with a much more lively and polished title screen. Complete with a song by Rock Band and the originators of being big in Japan, Mr. Big, and you better get used to their song. Of of course, there's the aforementioned cheesy cutscenes, which, while having a lot of animation, consistently look inconsistent, with weird proportions and perspective used throughout. And some voice acting of a questionable quality as well.
Sounds like a plan. Can I bring you back a hot dog?
They do have some charm though, and there's quite a few of them, so overall, I think they are a net positive, although some are absolutely longer than they need to be.
Shut up already!
As soon as you start moving Spidey, you'll notice he's been given a bit of a makeover with new animations and moves, and that the speed of the game has been greatly accelerated. Perhaps a bit too much. Like, for example, I find the web swinging to now be a bit wild compared to the Genesis version. And really, aside from the walk speed, I don't think the original game needed a big speed boost anyway, but it's fine, I guess. Thankfully, wall crawling is now easier, as Spidey just sticks to walls automatically if you start to just rub your junk on them. And you can even round corners to boot, which is pretty neat considering many later Spider-Man games didn't even allow you to do that. What's more is that you can now refill your web fluid through pickups you just find in the stages, as the whole taking pictures mechanic has been taken out. It was a neat feature for sure, but I don't exactly miss it. What they did add, however, was 21 collectible comic book covers, which absolutely blows my Spider-Man mind, because these are like not the original comic book art scanned in, but cute little pixel recreations of those classic covers throughout all of Spider-Man's history. This has to be the first time such a collectible was introduced in a Spider-Man game, as it took years before it became standard practice. You can find these covers in short little stages that you access through the open world map system. Yes, in case you didn't know, this is technically the first non-linear Spider-Man game ever made. After completing the intro stage, you're given a really impressive map of Manhattan, where you can select various stage types which contain lots of different challenges. There's several subway stages exclusive to this version where you can take on baddies in or outside the train cars. Lots of downtown levels, Central Park, sewers. Basically, they remixed existing stages from the Genesis game and made them a bit more bite-sized, with a comic book cover hovering somewhere nearby. Eventually, boss locations open up, and you can then start collecting the keys for Fiskey's Mega Bomb. And it's here where Technopop went super hard, adding a ton of new villain fights. Vulture, Mysterio, complete with a crazy pinball stage, a proper final encounter with Venom inside a clock tower that even has a cutscene, which, yeah, and then there's the real surprise, 2 Spider-Man villains that to me aren't really Spider-Man villains per se. Bullseye and Typhoid Mary appear right before Kingpin in a 1v2 fight. And while I'm aware they must have scrapped with the old webhead once or twice before in the comics, you can't argue that they are best known for regularly ruining Matt's life. Not me, the blind guy. So that's a lot of extra stuff, but not all of the changes were for the better. For some reason, Technopop decided to change how ducking works, which is usually done by pressing down on the D-pad, which keeps you ducked as long as you're holding on to the button. But no, here, one press of the down arrow keeps you in a crouching mode, so you always have to press up again to stand, which caused me, and I'm sure a few others, plenty of missed attacks, as it's not usually how most side-scrollers work. Moving along, as I cleverly foreshadowed earlier, the song by the band your uncle probably knows can be heard blaring in way too many stages. I mean, it's cool to hear lyrics in-game, but they went a little overboard with this. Like, at least get a few different tunes instead of, just the one. And while I know this next thing might seem super minor, believe me when I say it adds up over the course of a playthrough. Anytime you hit anything, or a human at least, Technopop decided it should be punctuated by this little yelp of pain. Every single time. Yes, no matter what villain, big or small, they will always make this noise, and it indeed gets pretty annoying.
Shut up!
I will leave, though, on probably the most positive point, which is that Technopop listened to my issues earlier and decided to address them here, back in 1993. They added proper endings, 3 of them in fact. There's the good one, where you beat Fisk and save MJ, complete with a snarling J. Jonah, who gets all pissy now that you've been declared innocent. The bad ending, where you beat Fisk, but MJ unfortunately gets burned alive by acid. And then the worst one, where you get your shit rocked by Fisk, with you and MJ then both dying in a scene that wouldn't be out of place in Mortal Kombat. Damn, I mean, like, they didn't deserve that. Like, why couldn't it be Paul or something? Okay, with all that said, and now that the webs have settled which version comes out on top, well, I'll be delighted to tell you with... what the... Oh no, a plushie ad! Run! Hey you, if you're enjoying this web-spinning episode of the Mediocre Spider-Man, what better way to celebrate the mayhem than procuring the official Matt McMuscles plushie? He's squishy, he's bitchy, and he comes in an astonishingly generous and overly complimentary 9 inches long. Head on over to youtooz.com right now to add him to your collection within the next 7 days before he's gone forever. And once he's locked inside your home, feel free to give him an elbow drop, powerbomb, set him up for tea time, or even weirder things. No judgment here! Link in the description and pinned comment below. He is literally guaranteed to improve the quality of your life. Not a guarantee. Damn you, this is my show! Don't hawk that what happened crap here! Anyway, overall, I think all the added content and changes in the Sega CD remake were for the better. The Genesis version is, of course, completely serviceable, but the cheesy cutscenes, added bosses, and tweaked difficulty, complete with passwords, makes this version the definitive one, which in my experience is a rare occurrence. So that's why I'm giving Spider-Man vs. Kingpin on the Sega CD 4 melting MJs out of 5. And with that, fellow webheads, we have come to the end of another scintillating showdown. In the battle of Spider-Man vs. Spider-Man, the winner was, of course, Spider-Man. Hell yeah! And if you know of any other games or topics in the video game Spider-Verse you'd like me to hit in the face, I pull my punches of course, let me know in the comments below or over in the tangled web that is my social media. And until then, Excelsior, true believers, and I'll see you next time on the Mediocre Spider-Mat.